Video games. They're something that practically everyone plays in one form or another these days, whether it's on a PC, cell phone, tablet, or dedicated piece of gaming hardware. The video game industry is now worth $108.9 billion and is projected to grow to $128.5 billion by 2020. One of the factors that has allowed the industry to grow has been the movement from being focused on a market of gamers to being one focused on everyone. One of the driving forces that made video games an activity for everyone was Satoru Iwata. He is perhaps one of the most influential people that has ever worked in the games industry. It's important to look back at his life, career, inspirations, and the immense impact of his work. Satoru Iwata was born on December 6, 1959 in Sapporo, Japan, the capital and largest city on the northern Japanese prefecture of Hokkaido. In both middle and high school, Iwata showed that he had leadership skills through his election as class president, student council president, and the president of a variety of clubs. In 1974, after he saved enough money by doing a dishwashing job and from receiving an allowance from his father, Iwata was able to purchase an HP 65, the very first programmable calculator. He began attending Hokkaido Sapporo South High School in April 1975, and in his junior year, he began to develop his very own games that he would share with his peers. His first game was a crude version of baseball, played with nothing but numbers. It was his classmates' joyful response to the games that he made that inspired him to want to get into the industry, saying, "I think it's like when members of a comedy duo find each other. When I made something, he responded. That's how I found my first customer and awakened to the joy of making something. I often think how I would have never made video games if it weren't for that experience." In 1978, Iwata finally purchased his own computer, the Commodore PET. Coincidentally, the PET had a very similar central processing unit to the one found in the Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES, which he would later go on to develop games for. He himself said, "It was my good luck that the Famicom system CPU was the 6502. By chance, the computer I used for fun in university was a Commodore PET. Its CPU was a 6502, so by the time I started working, I was a 6502 expert." After graduating high school, Iwata started attending the Tokyo Institute of Technology in April 1978 with a major in computer science. In order to gain even more experience, Iwata became an unpaid intern at Commodore Japan, assisting Yash Terakura, the company's head engineer. Terakura said that Iwata would stop by his office almost every day after school. He helped me make test programs, sorted my books and floppy disks, and did other minor things. He was helping so that he could obtain news about our new products as well as technical information not available to the public, Terakura said. This extra training would become highly useful to him later on when he started his career. Besides his internship, Iwata and his friends created a club for playing and creating games, with peers living in apartments close to his, calling his room Game Center Iwata. The club that Iwata created games with would eventually become HAL Laboratory Incorporated, and Iwata would work part-time for them until he graduated in 1982. Then, he became full-time, kickstarting his career. After he was appointed HAL's coordinator of software production in 1983, he steadily helped build a relationship between them and Nintendo. He went to Nintendo's headquarters in Kyoto by himself to ask if HAL could work on games for the NES, and they granted them permission. Some of the games Iwata worked on for the NES at HAL include Joust, Balloon Fight, NES Open Tournament Golf, Earthbound, and the Kirby games. NES Open Tournament Golf is a perfect example of Iwata's drive, passion, and skill as a programmer. At first, Nintendo asked other developers to program the game. However, every single one of them said they couldn't do it, citing the fact that the game would be too big to fit onto an NES cartridge. Only Iwata was willing to take on the challenge of developing the game, and it proved to be a very difficult task, requiring him to make his own data compression algorithm in order to fit the game on a cartridge. Iwata's skill and dedication as a programmer was unmatched, and he would work even on holidays and weekends out of sheer passion. This work ethic gained him the respect of those around him, including Nintendo's president at the time, Hiroshi Yamauchi. Later in 1993, when HAL was dangerously close to having to file for bankruptcy, Yamauchi insisted that Iwata take over as company president, and Iwata got his big break. Despite little experience in management, Iwata was able to turn HAL's fortunes around with Nintendo's help in a mere 6 years. As a result of his lack of management experience, Iwata pushed himself to become better at it. Masahiro Sakurai, the creator of Kirby and Super Smash Bros., who worked with Iwata at HAL, said, "He was a man of effort. Even though he didn't start out in the managing field, he read numerous management books. He would ask for advice from the necessary people that he would take to heart." Another one of his crowning achievements while at HAL actually doesn't have much to do with HAL at all. Between 1996 and 1999, the developer Game Freak was working on Pokemon Gold and Silver for the Game Boy Color, and were having trouble fitting everything that they wanted into the game. Iwata stepped in and created an entire set of compression tools for graphics, making it possible to fit the entire region of Kanto from Pokemon Red and Blue into the game. In addition to Gold and Silver, Game Freak was also in the process of bringing Red and Blue to the West. Tsunekazu Ishihara, the president of the Pokemon Company, said himself that Iwata was integral to the process of bringing Pokemon to the West. Pokemon, of course, went on to become a huge success in the West as well as in Japan, making this contribution by Iwata arguably one of his most influential as a programmer. His last major contribution to a game while at HAL was assisting Masahiro Sakurai with the creation of Super Smash Bros. For the Nintendo 64. Smash Bros. Was a side project for both Sakurai and Iwata, as they were both extremely busy working on other games. Despite this, Iwata continued to work on the project, and a working prototype was developed. Without this prototype that most likely could not have been built without Iwata's help, Nintendo might not have approved Smash Bros. To be officially developed. Shortly after the release of Super Smash Bros., Iwata made the jump from HAL to Nintendo, taking on a position as the head of its corporate planning division, as well as taking a seat on the board of directors. One of the challenges of the gaming industry at the time was the fact that games were becoming increasingly more expensive to create, and so the profitability of the entire industry was going down. Iwata also believed that gamers were not as interested by advancements in 3D graphics as they had been in the past. With these two issues in mind, Iwata had the goals of making game development cheaper and faster, as well as creating entirely new experiences in games while adding a unique spin to existing concepts. Iwata met his goals, and his actions allowed Nintendo to generate a 41% increase in profit by the end of the 2001 fiscal year. In 2002, Yamauchi was ready to retire as president of Nintendo, and he chose Iwata as his successor despite his 2 short years at the company. Yamauchi stated, "Taking into account the things I've encountered in my experiences as Nintendo president, I have come to the conclusion that it requires a special talent to manage a company in this industry. I selected Iwata-san based on that criteria. At the very least, I believe him to be the best person for the job." In addition, Yamauchi's last request to Iwata before stepping down was, Nintendo give birth to wholly new ideas and create hardware which reflects that ideal, and make software that adheres to the same standard. The first thing Iwata did as president was meet in person with Nintendo's 40 department heads and 150 regular employees. This was very different from Yamauchi's style of barely meeting with employees and only having one speech a year. The creator of Mario, Shigeru Miyamoto, said the atmosphere under Yamauchi was stuffy and that Iwata improved the ventilation. This change under Iwata continued in 2004, when a huge reorganization of Nintendo took place internally, combining numerous departments that Yamauchi established, with the goal of increasing the ease of collaboration. It's important to note that even as the president, Iwata still found time to work as a programmer. Soon after becoming president, Iwata assigned himself to work with a development team at HAL Laboratory, who are working on Super Smash Bros. Melee for the Nintendo GameCube. His involvement is cited as one of the main reasons the game was able to release on time. His next big change was shifting Nintendo's market strategy to the Blue Ocean strategy. The Blue Ocean strategy has companies targeting markets that don't exist yet, as opposed to markets that do, called Red Oceans. In this case, the video game market was the Red Ocean, while all the people not yet playing were the Blue Ocean. The first experiment with this new strategy was the Nintendo DS. Released in 2004, it was a new handheld system that had 2 screens, with one of them being a touchscreen. This allowed for intuitive control for people who are not used to playing games or using game controllers, a foreshadowing to the touchscreen-filled world of today. The system also reflected Iwata's philosophy around gaming hardware, as it had much weaker graphical capabilities than its competitor, the Sony PlayStation Portable, or PSP. However, the system went on to become a massive success and is the second best-selling video game console of all time. The console's success was tied to its library of easily accessible games. Finally, one of Iwata's greatest achievements as president of Nintendo was the Wii. Planning for the Wii began in 2003, where Iwata pushed his employees to develop a revolutionary new product, telling them, "A mom has to like it." After 6 months of constant development and scrapped ideas, they came up with the Wii Remote, a controller that used a light sensor and accelerometers to enable motion controls. This controller fit Iwata's vision for an accessible controller that anyone would be able to pick up and know how to use with ease. Iwata also had a specific vision for the console itself, telling the engineers that it had to be no thicker than 3 DVD cases stacked together, and that it should be able to survive being dropped 1.5 meters onto concrete. When the Wii was released, it was a massive success, outselling both of its competitors, the Sony PlayStation 3 and the Microsoft Xbox 360, due to its appeal to everyone. Both the Wii and DS were able to exist thanks to Iwata being there to push Nintendo's employees' creativity to their limits, fulfilling Yamauchi's final request for innovative hardware and software. Iwata also did a number of things outside of his normal duties as president. He hosted an interview series with the developers of various games called Iwata Asks, where he asked questions about the development process. A lot of information about game development that normally would not get out to the public was made available this way, and a few Iwata Ask pieces were used during the research for this video. In addition, he also became the host of Nintendo Directs. Instead of having regular press conferences to feature announcements, Nintendo Directs are pre-recorded videos that are streamed live on the internet. Through all of this, he became more than just the president. He became the recognizable face of Nintendo. While Iwata had all of these successes in his career and more, he was not without his failures. During the life of the GameCube, online gaming was becoming increasingly popular, and Iwata didn't believe that it was the right time for Nintendo to jump on board, saying, "We're not negative toward the idea of going online, we're just practical." The Wii would go on to have online compatibility, but its online offerings paled in comparison to those offered by Sony and Microsoft with the PS3 and 360. Some advantages they had included easily connecting with friends, integrated voice chat, and ready-to-go online platforms that developers can integrate into their games. Meanwhile, the Wii had none of those things. If you wanted to add a friend, you had to exchange absurdly long numbers known as friend codes. Developers also had a harder time integrating online services into their games on Wii. However, Iwata's biggest failures by far are the 3DS and Wii U. The 3DS was released in 2011 in the US with a price tag of $249 and promised stereoscopic 3D without the need for glasses. The system sold poorly and caused the company's stock to fall by 12%. This prompted Nintendo to cut the price down from $250 to $170 a month after it released. In 2014, Iwata stated that he misread the market and didn't realize how much people's lifestyles had changed since the Wii came out. The Wii U was released in 2012 and became Nintendo's worst-selling home console ever, selling only 13.56 million units in its lifetime, compared to the Wii's 101.63 million. Iwata admitted that the Wii U was a failure as a successor to the Wii, with no games showing enough originality. The underwhelming back-to-back releases of the 3DS and Wii U caused Nintendo to have its first operating loss in 30 years, which continued until 2015. Iwata voluntarily halved his salary twice during this period, and managed to avoid having to lay off employees. On June 24, 2014, Iwata put out a public message to shareholders that he had surgery to remove a tumor in his bile duct. After a few months of recovery from a fruitful surgery, he returned to his position. On June 26th, he abruptly became sick again and was hospitalized. On July 11, 2015, Iwata passed away at the age of 55. Gamers, developers, businessmen, journalists, and more all mourned the loss of an industry icon and paid tribute in many ways. It's undeniable that he had a huge impact on the industry. The games that he helped create as a programmer went on to become many people's favorite games, inspired future game developers, and gone on to become massively successful series. His focus on making games for everyone are credited with vastly expanding the gaming market and creating a new genre. The impact of the DS can be seen in the touchscreen of cell phones and tablets and the games that we play on them. The impact of the Wii can be seen on the controllers being used with virtual reality. Controllers for VR are generally more advanced Wii remotes, with the same stick form factor, albeit with much more advanced technology inside. Of course, both the Wii and DS expanded the amount of people that play video games today, as they reached into an untapped market and became many people's gateway to their first video game. Even though he is now gone, Iwata's philosophy of making unique products and forging his own path remains at Nintendo. This is evident with Nintendo's latest console, the Switch, a portable home console hybrid system unlike anything else on the market. Thus far, it seems like it might be tapping into some of the Wii's magic, with Nintendo predicting that it will outsell the Wii U's lifetime sales within its first year. The industry has recognized Iwata's influence by posthumously awarding him the Lifetime Achievement Award at both the 2015 Golden Joystick Awards and the 2016 DICE Awards. This illustrates how he's perhaps one of the most influential people that has ever worked in the games industry. Although he is gone, Satoru Iwata will live on through his influence on the future of gaming. During a keynote speech at the 2005 Game Developers Conference, Iwata summed up the reason why many believe him to be so successful.
On my business card, I am a corporate president. In my mind, I am a game developer. But in my heart, I am a gamer.